This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
I want to welcome back Rabbi Glatstein. Rabbi Glatstein, thank you so much for being here with us. And I've heard that you've traveled the world. You've gone to France, and I'm sure you have a lot to share, ideas for Klal Yisrael, and Befrat, on Tisha B'Av, what messages can you give over, something that's relevant, so we can take out chizik, some messages for Klal Yisrael.
Thank you, Menachem. We just came back, like as you mentioned, from a really whirlwind trip to France, to Tzarfas, and I just want to mention what's Nagel in Yonenu here on Tisha B'Av, about some of the locations, destinations, and experiences that are relevant to really the most mournful day of the Jewish calendar. So we start off in Paris, and you can't go to Paris without going to the most iconic spot in all of France, to the most visited monument in the world, actually the most visited monument with an entrance fee. And what hit me there at the Eiffel Tower, which the architect was Gustave Eiffel, and it's amazing. If anybody thinks of France, or if anybody does an advertisement for France, or anything that's trying to capture Tzarfas, there's always a picture of the Eiffel Tower. It's the most iconic destination in the country. And here, France is a country of culture, of art, of history. They had kings, they had monarchs, they had dynasties, and it's thousands of years old. And nevertheless, the iconic monument that represents France is a tower that was put up 130 years ago. Can you imagine? Here it is, they have hundreds of years of history and art and painters and sculptors and kings, and the icon of the country is something that was only put up 130 years ago. At the time, it was considered an atrocity of architecture. They wanted to tear it down. It was put up for the World Fair. And it gave me the following insight. Everything that the country stands for, it's like the Navi says, Vayelchu acharei hahevel vayabolu. It's hevel v'havolim. There's nothing there. It's a big bluff. Because what represents this great country of culture and art is something that was basically erected 130 years ago, and they didn't even consider noteworthy at all. So it's a lesson in life in general. All the Tanugei Olam Hazeh that we sometimes pursue and run after, you pull away the veil, you see there's nothing behind it. It's all hot air. It's all nothing. Here it is, the most cultured country in the world is represented by an icon that was put up in very recent history. We went to Versailles, which is the palace of the kings of France, of all the various Louis, Saint Louis, Louis XIII, and the extravagance and the royalty and the luxury and the beauty was indescribable. I mean, this is a palace like none other in the world. Nothing rivals it. And the following thought came to me, which I think is very important for Tisha B'Av. The Chida, when he went to the Tower of London, so, it's interesting that one of the all-time great Gedol Yisrael went to the Tower of London to see the Queen's jewels and to see the King's crowns. And the Chida had the following insight, which I think we could borrow for Versailles. And the Chida's insight was, Im la'oivre ratzoinai kach, if this is the wealth, this is the extravagance, if this is the reward for those who violate the will of Hashem, then extrapolate the great reward in store, la'oisei ratzoinai. So in other words, when a Yid looks at the palace, the jewels of the king, the jewels of the queen, Versailles, the thought should be, this is what Olam Haba is. When I see someone driving that car that I want, no. There's no time in this world. What do you need that car now for? In Olam Haba, you're going to have a much better vehicle. You're going to have a much better bias. In other words, all the beauty and all the nice things we see in this world, don't be jealous of. It's not something to desire now. Use it as a motivation. This is what is in store for those who are mispalel kahoigen, for those who are mizdabek HaKadosh Baruch Hu, for those who raise their families al taras HaKodesh. All the wealth and all the success in the world is there to give us an imagery and to give us a certain feeling of reality of what's in store, la'olam haba. And I think a very similar thought could be employed for Tisha B'Av. We have an idea that Tisha B'Av is a mayid, which is a very unusual idea. Tisha B'Av is a mayid. We don't say Tachnan on Tisha B'Av. We don't say Tachnan Erev Tisha B'Av. Beis Yosef says you don't even say Tzedek Hadin on Tisha B'Av. It's considered a mayid. It's considered a yomtiv in a certain sense. Well, what kind of yomtiv is this? So perhaps we could just adjust this idea of the chidah. The Navi Yeshaya says, "Berega katoin azavtich uverachamim gedolim akabetzech." Berega katoin azavtich, I forsook you for a split second, but with great mercy I will gather you in. Think about it. The entire Golus, Yeshaya Navi is saying, could be considered a brief moment, a rega. Relative to the Achros Hayamim and the good that's in store Achros Hayamim, that's Rachamim Gedolim. B'shetzef ketzef histarti panai rega mimech. You know what Golus is? God says, I'm hiding my face from you for a brief second. In other words, you know what the Holocaust is? The Inquisition, the Chmielnicki pogroms, the Chorvei Samegash, it's rega. It's 1 second. So the entire kinnis, all 45 kinnis that we say throughout Tisha B'Av, you know what that is? Rega. It's more than a rega. It's 2,000 years. But relative, vis-a-vis to the good times in store of the Asad Lavai, it's rega. So we need to take the kinnis and say, if this kinnis is rega, imagine what the chesed oilam is. Imagine what the good times in store of the So in other words, if the only way to get a glimpse into the happiness of Asad Lavai is to experience a Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av helps us have a hasaga and some understanding of the happiness of the La'achros Hayamim. So in that sense, Tisha B'Av could be employed as a yomtiv, as a moyed. It gives us the sort of the barometer to help us measure the happiness of the Achros Hayamim.
It's interesting what you're saying, because most people don't focus on that positive side. The way you're putting it down is amazing, and some people feel, despair and feel like, another year and another year. Where is this all going? But what you're saying is we need to focus on the hope, focus on that positive, where we are, and where we're going to be in Mitzvah Hashem.
Yeah, but Hashem, look, the Medrash says that on Tisha B'Av Noilad Menachem, that the Mashiach is born on Tisha B'Av. The idea being that sort of the seeds of redemption are apparent in the Churban, because the Churban gives us a glimpse of the magnitude of the Achros Hayamim. If the Churban, which is a rega, is of such great magnitude, imagine the magnitude of the Achros Hayamim. One of the places we visited was in Provence, in the south of France. We went to Pointe-Garde, which is a Roman aqueduct, it's amazing that 2,000 years ago, they built basically a bridge, like the Brooklyn Bridge. And it was an aqueduct that brought water from the mountains to the low-lying areas. It was able to bring 9 million gallons of water daily to the baths, to the sinks, to the pipes of all Roman villages in the south of France. So I was doing some research. When did they build this aqueduct, Pointe-Garde? They built it between the years 60 and 80 of the Common Era, which is exactly at the time of the Churban Beis HaMikdash. The Churban was in the year 70. And the Gemara says that if somebody tells you that Yerushalayim is built and Caesarea are built, don't believe them. If someone tells you they're both destroyed, don't believe them. But if someone says Beis Hamikdash is destroyed, Yerushalayim is destroyed, and Rome is built up, believe them. So we know that for our world, in Yerushalayim, the Chumash Beis Hamikdash. That means the Romans were building buildings of the greatest grandeur and beauty and great architecture, and that's point to guard. In other words, what the Beis Hamikdash was to us, it was destroyed. The point to guard, this aqueduct, is what the Goyim built for themselves. There's a very important idea in the Maral that when the Goyim destroyed the Beis Hamikdash, the kavod and the beauty and the majesty of Yisrael, they co-opt and they take for themselves. So really, this point to guard is the stolen, hijacked glory of Yerushalayim and the Beis Hamikdash, and it's breathtaking what they were able to build. And you realize this is kavod Yisrael. They just stole it, co-opted it, hijacked it for themselves, and it gives you a little bit of a glimpse of the beauty and glory of the Beis Hamikdash, which that was destroyed then, and the point to guard was built exactly at that time. I want to share with you about another experience we had. When we were in Paris, right outside in city center in Paris, is a hotel, Hotel de Ville. And we went there because that was the exact location of the burning of the Shas in 1242. Kina Membez, Shali Srufa Ba'esh, was written by the Maram of Rothenburg, Rav Meir of Rothenburg, who wrote that Kina, commemorating the burning of the Shas in the year 1242, commemorating the burning of 24 cartloads of Shas in 1242. The Maram of Rothenburg, of course, was the Gadol Hadar. He was the Rebbe of the Rosh. He was kidnapped. He was held in a prison in Einsesheim, and they demanded an exorbitant ransom. And the Maram Paskin, they can't ransom him because the Mishnah says in Gittin, in Poidin as Tashvuyin, Yaser Mikdei Dameim. And the Rosh, his student, argued on his Rebbe. He said that doesn't apply to the Gadol Hadar. So the Rosh took responsibility to raise the funds. Meanwhile, the Maram passed away in jail. And they were after the Rosh, so the Rosh had to run away to Spain, and the Rosh, the great Ashkenazic Posek, had to go to Eretz Sfarad. Now, the Maram Rothenburg was a student of Rabbi Yitzchak Mivina, the Arzarua. By the way, the Maram Rothenburg is the author of Tosfos and Masechta Yuma. You learn Tosfos and Masechta Yuma, you see the signa and the nusach is a little bit different. There's a different Bala Tosfos, the Maram Rothenburg. So, I was thinking about the following. Why do we talk about the burning of Shas on Tisha B'Av? It's a tragedy, but there are many Jewish tragedies. There are many times where whole communities were massacred, and we don't mention it. We could have kinnis about blood libels. We could have kinnis about so many possible Jewish tragedies. Why talk about the burning of books in 1242? Is that really relevant to Tisha B'Av? In other words, yeah, I understand we talk about the Hasar Harugei Malchus, Arzei Levanoin, because the Gemara says, Shkula Misa Tzadikim Kisreifas Beis Elokeinu. The death of the righteous is like the burning of the Beis Hamikdash. But why the burning of books? The burning of books is not like the Churban Beis Hamikdash. What does it have to do with Tisha B'Av? And Hashem Heyer Einai, to a new insight. You know, there was somebody present in 1242 at the burning of the Shas. His name was Rabbi Hillel of Verona. And he recorded that just earlier, in that exact spot, a different Jewish tragedy took place. A burning of other books, the burning of the books of the Rambam. And we know that many of the Rishonim in France, in the south of France, and it was led by Reb Shlomo min Hahar, Reb Shlomo of Montpellier, and Rabbeinu Yoina. They did not favor the works of the Rambam. They held that some of the things the Rambam wrote in the Sefer Hamada, in the Mar Nevuchim, were what we call a bit edgy, a little bit not with what they considered normative Jewish thought, and they challenged the Rambam, and it was taken too far, probably by some of the people who were not of the caliber of the Rishonim, and they took it to the Dominican monks, and they said the works of the Rambam are against Christianity, and they reviewed the works of the Rambam, and sure enough, they found that the Rambam's works were critical of Christianity, and they burned the works of the Rambam in 1242 in that city square, which is now opposite the Hotel Divel. And then shortly after, an accusation was made against the Shas. And in that spot, they burned the Shas. Says Reb Hillel Verona, you think it's a coincidence that they burnt the Shas in the exact spot that they burnt the works of the Rambam? No, it was Mida Keneged Mida Min HaShamayim. They orchestrated to take up the cause of the Rambam because they disparaged the words of the Rambam. So Klal Yisrael lost, came out all the printed, published Shas throughout Sarfas. That's why it happened. And I'm thinking about this. I say, no wonder why we speak about this on Tisha B'Av. What is this an example of? This is sinas chinam of the highest measure. You know what sinas chinam of the highest measure is? Sinas chinam to Gedolei Yisrael. Yeah, we know sinas chinam between one brother and another, between one family and another, between one person, the Kila, and another. I just saw Rabbi Yonasan Eibish, it says, when the Gemara says the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed because of sinas chinam, it means baselid hatred to the Chachnei Yisrael. And what more powerful and poignant example of sinas chinam to the Chachnei Yisrael than Shali Sruf Avesh and the burning of the Gemara? Why was the Gemara burnt in 1242? Because they did not show the proper respect to perhaps the greatest of all the Rishonim, Rabbeinu Moshe ben Maimon. That is the conclusion of the Kinnis. You know how we got in this mess? Not only baseless hatred between brother and brother, but more severe than that is hatred toward the Chachamim. And I think there's a very important point to bring out from here. You know, recently at an Aguda convention, somebody made the point that the reason why there's so many people going off the derech is because the derech has become too narrow. So what do you expect? There's not enough room on the derech for anybody to navigate. I think a similar point could be made regarding the Gedolei Yisrael and Chachmei Yisrael. I don't hold of this Gadol, I don't hold of that Gadol, I only hold of the Gadol that learns a Tosfos the way my Rosh Yeshiva taught me to learn the Tosfos. My idea of a Gadol is only someone who thinks about Eretz Yisrael the way my Rosh Yeshiva told me personally on a Thursday night on Chav Gimel Sivan to think about Eretz Yisrael. And anybody who veers a little bit off to the right or a little bit off to the left, no, he's not a Gadol B'Yisrael, he's not a Kasher Yid, he's not B'Koires. And I think there has developed a certain lack of tolerance, not just for Ish La'achiv, but even for Rabbanim and Chachmei Yisrael. Okay, everybody should follow the opinion of their Rosh Yeshiva and their Rebbe and their Rav, but to learn, to accept, to be soivel, to have an appreciation, to have a recognition that there are many Shvatim in Klal Yisrael, and there are many legitimate viewpoints, and there are many legitimate hashkafos. There's not only one narrow way to look at Eretz Yisrael, to look at Torah, to look at learning. There are many different Gedolei Yisrael throughout the ages. There are many approaches. There are many legitimate blue points. You know, they say that one of the Ger Rebbe said that after the war, we can't afford anymore to put so much focus on the color of the sack or the length of the brim or the width of. There are not enough of us for that to go around. We're ha'atim hama'at mikol ha'amim. And yes, we always talk about sinas chinam, but Rabbi Yonasan Eibishitz makes the point that the ikar problem of sinas chinam is to the Gedolei Yisrael. And somebody, so you say, who's the Talmid Chacham? Chafetz Chaim says, a Talmid Chacham is someone who's Yagea in Torah, and he could issue a psak halacha. So learn to be accepting, appreciative, learn to have healthy dose of respect for Chachmei Yisrael of stripes a little bit of a different shade than we're used to. I think would be a limud that would put us in very good stead especially on the day of Tisha B'Av. So these are just a few thoughts that perhaps are valuable for us to think about at this time and to take to heart. And Be'ezus Hashem, I'm sure many have very good ideas of what we could think about, what we could work on. And Kulam Ahuvim, Kulam Berurim, and may HaKadosh Baruch Hu give us Siyata D'Shmaya to be Mizboinein this Tisha B'Av on what really needs tikkun. And I thank you, Rabbi Menachem, for allowing me to share a few thoughts. And my humble bracha to you and to the audience is may HaKadosh Baruch Hu engender within us Ahava, V'Achva, V'Shalom, V'Reus, and we should be zoicha to the geula that we're all yearning for. B'mher v'yameinu, amen.
Amen, amen. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.